I'm Neel Arora from Nestlé, and you're listening to the CPG Guys podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys. Welcome back to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm your humble and adorable co-host, PVSB. I also moonlight as Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel, the digital commerce division of Omnicom. Please check out Flywheel's new thought leadership white paper called The Big Shift, which explores the historical balance of power between brands and retailers. As we record this episode, my intrepid partner Sri has fled the Raj Mahal along with his celebrity family and headed to Indio, California, home of Coachella, for a vacation weekend. So he's not able to join me today, though I will be reunited with him in a few days in Ithaca, New York, as the CPG Guys kick off Cornell University's annual Food Executive Program. But fear not, loyal listeners, we have a familiar voice joining me today to co-host the episode. All the way from Barcelona, Spain, making his fifth appearance on the CPG Guys, is the driving force behind the success of our sister podcast, the Red Hot FMCG Guys in Europe, which recently crossed 15,000 LinkedIn followers. Of course, I'm talking about the Director of Executive Search at Dwyer Partners. I'm proud to call him a very good friend. Please welcome Daniel Torres Dwyer. Daniel, how you doing, man?
Hey, Peter. Very good. Sunny afternoon here in Barcelona. Summer took a while to come, but it's finally here. So good to see you.
I'm so jealous that Sri got to go over to Shop Talk Europe this year. I was looking forward to spending time with you there, but we did actually get to spend some time together when we convinced you at the last minute to make a trip up the coast to Cannes. And so you and Sri and I were walking around, even recording some podcast episodes together. It was a lot of fun.
That was a long drive, but it was worth it. It was worth driving up the coast to Cannes. And I can tell you, I feel like I only scratched like 20% of the surface, but it was still extremely relevant. So I'll definitely be there next year. And by the way, Peter, did I hear fifth appearance on the podcast?
Yeah, fifth appearance. Yeah,
okay,
sure.
And what else?
Your fifth appearance. That's the one right after 4 and the one before 6. Yeah.
Isn't there something that happens around the jacket for the fifth appearance?
Jacket? You mean the coveted 5-timer CPG Guys varsity jacket?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I guess you technically qualify now.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to all your episodes, so I'm aware of that. I'm well aware of that because you mention it every third episode or something. So,
darn crap. Boy. Okay, so I think we kind of do it. But you know what, Daniel? You've been such a good partner at the FMCG Guys. I think that a CPG Guys 5-timer jacket is not quite befitting of you. I think you need something a little bit better. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to design a 5-timer jacket that focuses on the FMCG Guys. So you have a little more high-end swag to complement. And if anyone's watching this on video, you've got your lovely FMCG Guys Hawaiian shirt. So I think we need a nice winter jacket, an FMCG Guys varsity jacket to complement that. So we're gonna get that ordered up and out to you in very short order. How's that sound?
I'm very excited by that. I look forward to being able to dress FMCG Guys swag all year round. And it will mean that people will have an incentive to come to our show more times, because then we will also offer the 5-timer FMCG Guys jacket on our show as well.
Ooh, there you go. I love that. I think that's a great idea. You know, it's funny, Daniel, you and I were walking along the main street in front of the Palais at the Majestic in Cannes. And I probably about 30 people came up to me during the show and introduced themselves and asked to do selfies. And here comes another one, an eager young woman. And I thought I was getting ready to do a selfie, and she breezed right by me, ran right up to you and said, "Oh my God, you're Daniel from the FMCG Guys. I'm such a huge fan." And she spent a couple minutes fangirling you. And I sat there and thought about, wow, so that's how it feels from the other side, like watching it happen. I was really proud. So Daniel, you're doing some great stuff. Tell like give us some stats on, how many episodes have you done? Some you've had some big names on your podcast of late.
Yeah, no, definitely. So now we're on our 171st episode, I believe, as we speak. And yeah, basically, there's people that ask me if we copied the CPG guys, if we're a spin-off, or what's the story there. I say that we're actually both of them. So we also interview on a bi-weekly basis leaders and luminaries on the consumer goods industry. So we've had the VP e-commerce from Mars, Neil Reynolds. We've had the CEO of Big, Gonzalo Big. We've had the head of...
I've never heard of these companies. All not insignificant consumer brands companies. But
and I could continue with brands that nobody knows, like Unilever or Brooks Running. Nobody's
heard of them. But I got to tell you, we're just so incredibly proud that we offered. I like to say that we are the inspiration for the FMCG guys. You have your own twist on things with your co-host Afrain and Christina, but what's most important is we do collaborate very heavily. We're always comparing notes. We're trying to make each other's platforms better and better. We co-promote all the time. We co-appear. I know that we, the CPG guys and Shri, co-hosted a kickoff party to Shop Talk Europe, and I'm sure we've got more events like that. You and I are going to do the Retail Media Summit UK later this fall. So all sorts of things. We're just so incredibly pleased with the progress you've made. I get all the stats every day in LinkedIn because we're this how close we are. We actually are both administrators of each other's company pages on LinkedIn. So we're always comparing and trying to collaborate, figuring out how we can accelerate both our platforms, because we look at this as podcasting is not a competitive sport. It's very much about a rising tide lifts all ships.
It's not a zero-sum game.
No, and it's like wine and it's like craft beer, right? If you think you're going to be the only one someone drinks, you're crazy. It's better to get people into drinking wine and drinking craft beer, because you'll get a good share of stomach if you do that. So that's how we look at it. We want to be we want to be a piece of your brain. We want our fair share of your brain on a daily basis.
And Peter, can I do a quick call out to your audience that in the same way that we collaborate, if you're in the audience and you work in a CPG company in the US and you know good people in Europe that you think have good things to say, we're obviously very open to having new guests, luminaries that come on the show. So do reach out either to Peter or Shri or to myself through our LinkedIns or our websites to arrange to have you or anyone that you know on the show.
That's what we want. So thank you again, Daniel, for co-hosting today's episode Across the Ocean. But what's interesting is you're actually just across town from today's guest, who we will introduce in just a minute. How about that tease? Did you like that? First, let me remind everyone listening to this podcast that to help grow this community of CPG, FMCG/retail industry professionals looking for education and entertainment, if you're using either Apple or Spotify as your preferred platform, please leave us a rating and write a review to help feed the algorithm to make our podcast more findable by your professional peers. And while you're at it, please subscribe to and provide a rating for Daniel's podcast, the FMCG Guys, and our other allied podcast, CPG Scoop, with Reese and Jennifer. Links to Flywheel's Big Shift white paper, all the podcasts mentioned, the social media personas of Shri's performing artist superstar daughters, Ria and Lara, and his wife Kavita's podcast, Lights, Camera, Conversation on iHeartRadio. Can you believe that, Daniel? Shri's 400 episodes on a podcast. He's the fourth most celebrated member of that family. Maybe even eighth, because his 3 cats have more Instagram followers than the CPG guys do.
I'm going to call it the Shri NN.
Yeah, I know. Shri NN. I like that. Just anyhow, you find links to all those in the digital liner notes of this episode. It makes it really easy. So why don't we get on to our interview, the big feature. Like Daniel, this is not our guest's first visit to the podcast. I met him last year in Barcelona, where he currently lives. We were at Shop Talk Europe 2023. He's just returned from a work sabbatical and even wrote a thoughtful LinkedIn article about this experience, and we'll explore that a little bit shortly. He's the global head of e-commerce for the world's largest food and beverage manufacturer, Nestlé. Please join Daniel and me in welcoming back Neel Arora. Neel, welcome. Good to have you back on the CPG Guys. How you doing?
Hi, Peter. Hi, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Oh, man, we are so excited to have you. I can't wait to dig into the questions about it. I really love that article you wrote on LinkedIn with some of your perceptions of the perspective you got taking some time away from work and how you're reinvigorated going back into it. Before we get to the questions we've prepared, why don't you share with our audience what your current remit at Nestlé entails?
So my current remit is I'm responsible for all online sales at Nestlé. So that's all categories, all brands, all markets. And for us, really, it's around setting the strategy, setting the direction, creating the ambition, building capabilities, and of course, enabling the markets and zones through technology, services, etc.
That's perfect. Thank you, Neel. We're going to put in the digital liner notes of this episode, along with the multitude of Raj family links. I don't think we're going to have room. We're getting this close to running out of authorized characters to feed into it. It's like how many characters you can have in a product description on Amazon. You know, they have limits that we're getting close with all of his family links. No more, Sri, no more. But we're going to include links to your LinkedIn page, Nestlé's LinkedIn page, and Nestlé's corporate website so that our listeners can multitask while they listen to our scintillating conversation today. How about that? Neel, the CPG guys are really excited to hear about the sabbatical that you took, and we're able to do so. Many things most wait until they are retired. I mean, what a great opportunity that you took. What did you get from that experience? What would you pass on to other people that are still, deep in the career path and haven't really considered a sabbatical until they do retire?
Well, look, the experience was absolutely fantastic. I kind of set about with this objective of spending more time with my family, trying to get into shape, do a bit of sport, and also to learn Spanish, being that classic Brit abroad who lives in a country but hasn't quite yet picked up the language. So, Daniel, no test, please, because obviously you're a native here. And I must say, I absolutely loved it, but I learned so much from the experience, and I tried to condense it into this article. I think some of the highlights were, firstly, lots of people take time off for different reasons, but there's not so many people who take time off, let's say, in the prime of their career, especially doing something that they love. But I kind of remember the old adage that nobody lay on their deathbed and wish they spent more time in the office. And this is something that I learned, I read a few years ago, and it really stuck.
Or less time on the golf course.
Exactly. So this is something that I read a few years ago because I love my job. I love working the people that I work with, but I had this itch, let's say, that I wanted to scratch. One of the things which surprised me was, even though lots of people take time off, it's sufficiently unusual that people said, okay, what are you doing? Yeah, but what else are you doing? And come on, Neel, tell us, what are you really up to? And honestly, it was just about investing in myself, investing in time with my family.
It's unusual. Like, as you know, I do recruitment. And normally when people are taking time off, it's because they're kind of forced to take time off because they leave their current company or they burn out or something. So it is a different context.
Yeah, and I have to say a massive shout out to all the guys at Nestlé. So my boss, Geordie, who was just amazing. And also my team who, it was a big ask for me for them to take on the additional responsibility, but not just survived. Now that I'm back, I can see really they thrived. And they had a chance to grow. They had a chance to work on their leadership. So I'm still only just back, but let's just say first reaction is it seems like a win-win for everybody. And before I forget, because I'll get in big trouble, I also have to thank Mrs. Arora, because she was the one paying the bills, working whilst I was, taking time for myself.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Arora, for putting up with Neel at home all the time. I'm sure that must have been your toughest assignment. But I'm going to ask you, Neel, what all your friends and people were asking you. What were you actually doing during your time off? And now in a more serious note, like, how did you manage to disconnect from work and, also make peace with your decision to recharge and so on? But it is an unusual one. And when you take unusual decisions, people doubt you.
Yes. So look, the funny thing for me was I found switching off, honestly, really difficult. So my first few days off, I was thinking to myself, I've got this time off. I've got this incredible opportunity. I've got to make the most of every minute that I've got. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. Because this is what I think many of us are like in work, right? This is what drives us. This is what makes us successful. We see these opportunities. But actually, looking back now, I can see my fondest moments would be a Tuesday evening where I end up taking the kids out for lunch. And for them, it's just like a Saturday or a Sunday. Mentally, they don't carry these things that we carry with us. So we'd go out for Tuesday. It felt like a Sunday afternoon. And I'd have this fantastic experience with the family because I was patient, because I was present, because I was in the moment. And I think these are the memories. These are the things that I really cherish about this time. Yeah,
it must feel strange to not have work in like the even close horizon. And how has it been now that back to work? Like, how long have you been back and how has it been?
So I've been back for 4 weeks now. And honestly, it's like I never went away. So for my own ego, I almost wished someone had messed something up whilst I was away because no plates were dropped. And the reaction was, wow, it's 3 months already. So it's almost like no one missed you, right? So, and that's the truth about big successful organizations like Nestlé. There's such deep talent, really strong resources that it doesn't depend on just one person. So the strange thing is actually getting back into work. I found it really easy. So getting up to speed, getting engaged back in the projects again. It's actually funny that it was easier to get back to work than it was to stop working.
Neel, if the company had gone into the crapper while you were on sabbatical, I think that would have been a very good leverage point for you to discuss getting a raise when you came back. But anyhow, so let's talk about what you are doing now. You made mention of the fact what your remit is. Why don't you give us an idea of what a day in the life of Neel Arora as global head of e-commerce really entails at such a huge manufacturer like Nestlé?
Sure. So as I mentioned, there's really a handful of key things that we do, and any day could include any combination of these things. So one is around setting the ambition and the strategy. And here we provide, specific how-to guides for the markets. And also sometimes we're coaching in the markets, helping them build really strong action plans. The second one is around capabilities. And here we're creating content for the markets to digest, to absorb, but also we put loads of work into creating a community and sharing best practices between the markets. And then the third is around enablement. And this is relatively new for us as a global team. It's been the last year and a half, in the last 3 years. And this is about providing tools, technology, and services. So in any one day, I could be doing a combination of these things. So sometimes I'm in Barcelona with my team, preparing a training or in calls. Sometimes I'm in our head office in Switzerland, working with colleagues in marketing, in the rest of the global sales team, with our colleagues in IT on specific projects. And then sometimes I'm out traveling. I'm in the markets. I'm helping them drive changes, helping them firm up their strategies, and also taking their best practices and sharing it with the next markets that I'm able to visit.
Don't you love going out into the markets? I was down in Mexico City last week, my first visit there, and I got to see both how people are using digital commerce and content, to your point, to really accelerate the path to purchase, the consumer journey, but then also seeing, where are some of these omni-channel retailers in their evolution. I saw some that were definitely moving in the right direction. Some of them were still very, very rudimentary. I've got to imagine that it's, setting a bold engagement strategy for working with your retail customers where they are, not necessarily where you think they should be, has to be a lot of work, but it can be really satisfying when you help move them in that direction.
Yeah, I absolutely love spending time in the markets. And of course, just only a few years ago, we were in COVID and we weren't able to do this. And we kind of convinced ourselves that we could do it all online. Now, even in this digital world, we really see that value of the face-to-face connection, being out there, meeting customers, meeting your teams in the markets. And even though we know we've got these global mega trends, where we see increased digitization, the manifestation of that locally is very, very different. So you're in Mexico, that looks wildly different to continental Europe, which has some comparisons with Southeast Asia, but also some big differences as well.
Yeah. And what's the governance models for you guys? Because you have a global role, but then obviously the countries are executing a lot of the stuff. So how does that work? And how many countries are you working with?
Okay, so it's easier to say how many countries Nestlé is not in, right? So I think our last annual report, we said we're at 188 countries. And what are there? There's 200 countries in the world. So, and probably you can find our products in the Marshall Islands and the Vatican City. So Nestlé is vast. Our products are everywhere. And there's brands that we have that people don't even know are part of Nestlé. So actually what it means is that for me in the global team, in my position, it is the first thing I have to accept is I can never know everything. And I'm reliant on the brilliant people in the markets and the zones to really build that local expertise. My job is to set the North Star and then to be a connector between markets and zones to share best practices and then to give a framework to help markets choose their own path. But the work that our markets do, defining their own strategy is absolutely critical. In terms of governance and setup, we have regional teams, we have zone teams, we have category teams, and we carefully plan how and when we share information, meetings, KPIs, and so on. But I'm sure you can imagine in a company the size of Nestlé, it's complicated.
Yeah, just like a Facebook relationship, it's complicated. By the way, a rumor has it that the Pope keeps a stash of Nestle chocolate tucked under his papal robe at all times to give him the little energy boost he needs. So I think you are, Justin, but Nestle is ubiquitous as far as I'm concerned. All right, let me remind our audience that Daniel and I are speaking with Neel Arora. He's the global head of e-commerce at Nestle, the world's largest food and beverage manufacturer. So now that we understand where you are, how do you start helping your global organization measure success? What metrics do you create for accountability or inspiration? And how do you measure it against to ensure success ultimately for the consumer, that they're getting the best possible experience when Nestle is a product that they're considering? So
very difficult, and actually something we've spent a lot of time thinking about and working on. So we have our global e-commerce strategic framework, which gives the markets and us, let's say, helps them build their roadmap to achieve our ambition. And then what we've done is create what we call the e-commerce metrics that matter. So for each part of our strategic framework, we have leading and lagging indicators. And we've kind of promoted the most important ones, which we try and capture, we try and aggregate at a different level.
What about like the digital shelf, right? Because especially like in the US, it's relatively uniform. You have like the big retailers, but then when you're managing all the world, and specifically in Europe, every country, I think, works a bit different. You have different retailers. How do you align, like country by country, those outcomes at the digital shelf? Is that like through these metrics that matter? Or do you have like a different framework for that specific results of the digital shelf, in which it's not only about like commercial sales performance, but a lot about driving that top line marketing as well?
Great question. So look, digital shelf is a big focus for us right now in the e-commerce team and more generally at Nestlé for a couple of reasons, right? Firstly, we all know the context, which is that the industry is going through a different cycle now when it comes to growth. Growth is hard to come by. And execution on the digital shelf is a critical opportunity to help grow and drive our sales, right? If you're not executing there, then you're leaving money on the table. So there's a lot of attention on our execution standards. Supporting this, we've just rolled out a technology globally in 65 different countries, in almost 400 retailers, with a consistent framework to measure our e-commerce execution on all of our categories. So this is the level of effort we're putting into this. And what it gives us is both huge scale insight, where we can see the trends, see the best practices by market, by categories, and also the opportunities and gaps we have to improve. But it combines that with actionability. So we can use these tools to dive into what was happening in Walmart, in this postcode, in this store last week, to look at our on-shelf availability, to look at our content execution, etc., etc. So big focus for us. And really for the next year, our team, it's going to be a big priority is driving out on-shelf execution standards.
You made mention at the beginning of our conversation about the importance of content. Anyone who listened to this podcast knows that Sri, when he was at J&J under the tutelage of Chester Twigg, who's now over at BIC, used the term called SCANR, SCANR, which stands for Search, Content, Assortment, Navigation, Ratings, and Reviews. Those were the components of digital shelf excellence that they were focused on. Let's talk specifically about the content piece, because you brought it up. Does building brand content make a difference anymore in a digital creator economy? I mean, how do you integrate all the incredible user-generated content coming from social media into what you do? What's like the new norm, or is there one? Is it ever changing? Like what are you doing to make content help your brands reach customers in a meaningful way that drives conversion?
So it's funny you mentioned Scanner, because as part of this tool rollout, we've created our own acronym at Nestlé. I know many companies have their own acronym. Ours is called ADAM. So the A is availability. The D is discoverability. The second A is attractiveness. And then the M is for media. So this is a new thing we've tried to add into our digital shelf scores, is actually the element of driving traffic to the detailed pages. And to answer your question directly, this is critical because we know that today our product detail pages have huge amounts of traffic. So they're not just affecting our e-commerce sales. The tools are helping us measure our in-store availability. They're also helping build, or rather they are giving information to consumers about our brand. So when we look at the traffic to our product detail pages and we compare it with some of our websites that we own, sometimes it's much, much higher. And then we also know that consumers are looking at ratings and reviews to help make their own decisions before that final add to basket, that final purchase. So yeah, this is a bit, hence this is such a big focus for us right now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I think that can be a good exercise to think of when loyalizing customers, which I know is a big consumers, which I know is a big challenge right now for FMCG brands, CPG brands. Neel, as we wrap up this episode, I have two questions for you. The first one is, how do you keep up with the trends these days? You know, AI, clean rooms, what else? How do you keep up, and what else are you tracking and excited about?
So I think this is one thing I absolutely love about the e-commerce community. So I know the listeners to the CPG Guys is broader than that, but specifically in e-commerce, there is always great content on LinkedIn. There are podcasts like this show where you can go and get information from other brands. And then there's great industry events. Peter, you and I, we first, and indeed Daniel as well, we, as you mentioned at the start, we first met at Shop Talk Europe. I also met Sri there this year, which led to this podcast. And then the other thing is, honestly, people in our industry are just nice. You can talk with peers in a non-compete way, and share what it is that you're working on. But I really force myself to make time to do that, especially when you work at an enormous organization like Nestlé, which is really difficult to navigate. It's easy to have all of your time, all of your diary time, which is absorbed with your internal connections. But if you really want to be at the leading edge, I think having these connections, talking to smaller companies, talking to tech providers, is a critical part of our job.
Let me remind our audience again, if you're using Apple or Spotify, please take the time to give us a rating and write a review to tell us what you like or what you don't like about the CPG Guys. If you don't like me on the CPG Guys, don't write about that. I don't really care. I'm not going anywhere. But seriously, if you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to this ongoing conversation in our community, drop us a line at contact@cpgguys.com. Maybe you can appear on a future episode of this podcast. Finally, we want to thank our 33,000 LinkedIn followers and growing, many of whom are part of the 15,000 followers of the FMCG Guys. We are honored to be part of your podcast rotation. I speak for Daniel when I say that as well. Neel, thanks again for joining us today to share your thoughts around your experience, where Nestlé's going, and how you're keeping track of all the great things that are going on in this industry. Really appreciate it. Episode 2, 3 more, and you get your own 5-timer jacket, my friend. We'll send you some other swag in the meantime, just to keep you happy. How about that? Brilliant, brilliant. I'm sure Daniel will be happy to give you some FMCG Guys swag too, and probably even an invitation onto the FMCG Guys. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. Daniel, thanks again for co-hosting today's episode, and let me assure you that your very special FMCG Guys version of our 5-timer jacket is being produced and will be dispatched to you in very short order. Before we close, what were some of the highlights of our conversation that really caught your attention?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the fact that you can go away for 3 months being like a leader of many teams, and that things still seem to work seamlessly. I think that's a good example of leadership, right? And it takes like that exercise of ego, of letting the ego on the table and let other people take the lead while you're the northern light, right? The northern light, I mean the northern star. Northern light is the aurora, right? Exactly, aurora borealis. So be the northern light of that team while the other people execute and actually take the medals sometimes. And that comes as well in global, where you can never know everything, and countries have the expertise. So the role of global is to be a connector between markets and zones and give a framework for countries to have their own path, but still have that face-to-face interaction, because that really makes the difference. Neel also talked about e-commerce metrics that matter, but also in a different note, when talking about the digital shelf, and it just comes to show how important it is, completely different framework, well, not completely different, but really exhaustive framework of 400 retailers across 65 countries to analyze metrics for country and category, and also action initiatives. We talked about like the product display page, which has a lot of traffic, which I was surprised about, and that I think can really help brands engage customers in the different levels. So keep that in mind, and also ratings and reviews. And finally, we talked about working in an industry where people are nice and open to share knowledge. And I would also add, I totally agree. And it's an industry where everybody likes what they do, and people are very passionate. That's why when they leave, they come back for more.
Thank you for that, Daniel. Yeah, I agree. We are in a collaborative environment. No greater evidence than on this very own podcast. We open up every episode with the Fresh 4 News segment, and Melissa Burdick, she's president of PackView, which competes with Flywheel. But at the end of the day, we're all about raising the bar in our industry. We're all friends, and we're all trying to advance the ecosystem that we live in. So I agree with you. We are very collaborative. Anyhow, thanks again for joining us. To our audience, we'll get together once again on the next episode of the CPG Guys. Goodbye. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.